She didn't love you. Not really. She loved the way your eyes lit up when she entered the room. She loved that she could silence you with a sigh, make you question yourself with a glance, and that your day could be ruined by her silence alone. She didn't love your soul. She loved the control. At first it felt like love. It always does. The thrill of being chosen, the illusion that someone finally saw you. You weren't just a man anymore. You were her man. Every word she said felt like a gift. Every touch a reward. You wanted to be better because of her. Stronger, sharper, more desirable. But deep down beneath all the dopamine and dreams there was a quiet ache, a feeling you couldn't name, like you were being hollowed out. Slowly. You tried to ignore it. After all, she smiled when you brought her coffee. She laughed at your jokes. She held your hand in public. But every time you said no, she grew distant. Every time you needed space, she punished you with silence. Every time you had a boundary, she made you feel guilty for it. And so you adjusted, compromised. You became agreeable, flexible, smaller. She didn't have to raise her voice. She didn't need to beg or threaten. She just had to withdraw. Her absence became the weapon. And you, desperate to feel the warmth again, gave more of yourself away. Until one day you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the man staring back. You thought love meant sacrifice. That being a good partner meant making her happy no matter the cost. But somewhere along the way you stopped asking, "What about me?" You became addicted not to her love but to her approval. The validation. The feeling of being enough just for a moment. And she knew it. She fed it in doses. A smile here, a compliment there, just enough to keep you chasing. But you weren't in love. You were in submission. That's the wound. It's not just about her. It's about the pattern. The loop you've been stuck in long before she arrived. Maybe it started with a parent whose affection was conditional, or a teacher who praised you only when you performed. Somewhere in your story, you learned, I must earn love. I must be good enough. I must not make waves. So when someone comes along who dangles affection like a prize, you feel at home. Your nervous system recognizes it as familiar, not safe, but familiar. That's why you stayed. That's why you tried harder. Not because you're weak, but because your inner child is still trying to earn the love he never received freely. It's a psychological trap, a loop Carl Jung would call the unconscious compulsion. You don't choose her. Your shadow does. The parts of you that remain unseen, unloved, unhealed, they reach out in desperation, and she, knowingly or not, becomes the perfect mirror for your unworthiness. Every man has his trap. Some men chase women who need fixing, hoping to be the hero. Others fall for those who dominate, hoping to be accepted. In both cases, it's not about her, it's about him, his wounds, his emptiness, his unresolved past. She didn't love you. She loved what you gave her: attention, obedience, emotional labor. You in return loved the fantasy that if you were good enough, she'd finally love you back. But love doesn't look like that. Love doesn't demand your silence. It doesn't punish you for needing space. It doesn't treat your kindness like currency. Real love sees you, respects you, allows you. You were trapped in control, and she loved holding the leash. Now comes the mirror. Ask yourself, why did you stay? Why did you shrink every time she frowned? Why did you let her dictate your worth? The answer lives in your shadow. The part of you that believes love must hurt. That says, I'm only lovable when I give everything. That's not love, that's trauma reenactment. You were reliving the story of abandonment, hoping this time the ending would be different. But it never is. Until you confront it. Until you stop blaming her and start seeing the role you played. That's the hardest part. Not rage, not grief, but accountability. She controlled you, yes. But you handed her the remote. You silenced your truth, softened your voice, compromised your needs, all to keep the illusion alive. That if you just loved her enough, she'd finally choose you fully. But the truth is, she never would. Because she wasn't looking for love. She was looking for power. Control gives her certainty, predictability. And you, the kind man, the empath, the giver, were perfect prey. Not because you're broken, but because you're unaware, because your need to be needed blinded you to the cost. It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. You can't change her, but you can change you. The moment you start seeing your patterns, you take back your power. The moment you stop needing her to change, you start healing. And the moment you choose yourself not as an act of rebellion, but as a return to truth, she loses all control over you. She didn't love you, but that doesn't mean you're unlovable. She loved control. And now it's time to take it back. But taking back control isn't about becoming cold. It's not about building walls, playing games, or mirroring her manipulation. That's just another mask, another performance. The real confrontation is inward. Sit with yourself. No distractions, no music, no scrolling, just silence. Then ask, why did I betray myself just to keep her happy? You might feel anger rise, let it. You might feel shame. Let that speak too. Because beneath both is a simple truth: you didn't believe you were worthy without her. You thought you needed her to feel valuable. But here's the paradox: the version of you she loved wasn't even you. It was a filtered, edited, diluted version of you shaped to fit her expectations. She didn't love your truth. She loved your compliance. So now you're faced with a choice. Reclaim your truth, even if it means being alone, or stay broken just to be accepted. That's the turning point. It doesn't happen all at once. There is no single moment where the pain ends and peace begins. Healing is messy. Some mornings you'll wake up missing her, craving the chaos because it's familiar. Some nights you'll scroll through old photos, wondering if it was real. But slowly you start choosing differently. You stop reaching out when you feel anxious. You start speaking even when your voice shakes. You set boundaries not to punish, but to protect. And you realize her love wasn't love. It was possession, and you're done being owned. She didn't break you. You bent until you snapped, and now piece by piece you're rebuilding. But this time, no more masks, no more shrinking, no more begging to be seen. You are no longer a boy chasing scraps of affection. You are a man reclaiming his voice, his space, his soul. Let her go, not because she was evil, but because she was your mirror. And now that you see yourself clearly, you don't need the reflection anymore. There's a moment after the break when everything feels still. It's not peace, not yet, but a kind of numbness. The storm is over, and all that's left is the wreckage. You don't cry. You don't scream. You just sit there staring into the space where she used to be. The silence is no longer hers. It's yours. You check your phone less. Not because you're stronger, but because you've stopped expecting a message. You walk past the places you used to go with her, and at first the memories stab. Then slowly they soften. This is not healing, it's clearing. Making space for something real. You begin to notice how much noise there was, the constant effort, the tiptoeing, the calculations. Every interaction felt like a test, and you were always the one trying not to fail. But now there's no more grading, no more performance, just breath. This is the uncomfortable beauty of solitude. You start hearing your own voice again, faint, unsure, but unmistakably yours. And what it says surprises you. Because deep down, under all that longing, under all that pain, there's something else. Anger. Not the volatile rage that lashes out. No, this anger is quiet, focused. It's the anger of betrayal, not by her, but by yourself. You realize how many times you said yes when you meant no. How many times you smiled while shrinking. How many nights you convinced yourself it was love when it was really just control wrapped in charm. You're not mad at her for being who she was. You're mad at you for abandoning who you are. But that's a good sign, because it means you're waking up. Carl Jung said people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But you're done avoiding. You're turning inward now, into the places you used to run from, the shadows, the memories, the stories you told yourself to survive. You begin to see it clearly. She didn't just hold power over you, you gave it to her piece by piece, with every compromise, every silence, every time you swallowed your truth just to keep her near. And now you're done bleeding for affection. You start rebuilding, not all at once. At first it's subtle. You speak up in conversations. You say no without apology. You feel discomfort, but you don't run. You stand still, grounded. It's not that you don't miss her. Of course you do. But you've started to miss yourself more. And that changes everything. You return to your body, your breath, your routines. You pick up the guitar again. You go for walks without headphones. You cook for yourself, not for survival, but for care. You remember the books you never finished, the dreams you set aside, the parts of you she didn't care to know. And slowly those parts come back, not to impress anyone, not to win anyone, but because they're yours. You begin to feel a kind of sacred anger, not destructive, but purifying. The kind of anger that says, I deserve better, and I will never settle again. You stop checking her social media. You stop crafting fake responses in your head. You stop hoping for closure. Because you realize closure isn't something she can give you. It's something you give yourself the moment you decide the story is over. The moment you choose truth over fantasy. Presence over performance. You over her. You don't become a different man overnight. You simply begin remembering who you were before you forgot, before the need to be chosen distorted your sense of worth, before your heart learned to bargain and your voice learned to whisper. It starts with stillness, the kind that feels awkward at first, like silence on a first date with yourself. But then something shifts. That stillness becomes a sanctuary. You're no longer grasping for someone else to complete you. You're learning how to come home to your own presence. You start doing things not to be seen, but to see yourself. You go to the gym and don't take a photo. You clean your space not because someone is coming over, but because you live there. You stop chasing validation. You start building integrity. It feels unfamiliar, lonely even. There's no one clapping, no one affirming. But somewhere inside, a voice begins to whisper, "This is real." You begin redefining love, not as possession, not as sacrifice, but as two whole people choosing to walk together, not leaning, not dragging, not hiding. And for the first time, you admit to yourself that what you had wasn't love. It was control masquerading as connection. She didn't want your soul. She wanted your submission. She didn't want to understand you. She wanted to predict you, and now you're done being predictable. You begin to walk differently, not with arrogance, but with weight. The kind of weight that comes from knowing yourself, from owning your story, from no longer needing to explain your pain just to be believed. You start attracting differently too, not because you're playing a new game, but because you're not playing at all. You're just being. And that's magnetic. People feel it when a man no longer needs them, when he's kind without being soft, clear without being cruel, grounded without being guarded. You become a man who sees red flags and doesn't excuse them. You become a man who doesn't chase chaos just to feel alive. You become the kind of man your past self wouldn't even recognize, not because you've changed, but because you've unburied. You begin trusting yourself again, and that is the real rebirth, not falling in love with someone new, not proving she was wrong, but waking up one morning, looking in the mirror and saying, "There you are. I've missed you." And that man staring back doesn't need to be loud. He doesn't need revenge. He doesn't even need closure. He just needs truth, his own. And finally, after years of performing, he's willing to live it. She didn't love you, and that no longer haunts you, because you no longer love the version of yourself who needed her to. That part of you, the boy who begged, who bent, who bled, he's been laid to rest. And in his place stands someone else. Someone quiet, someone strong, someone free. There are nights when the world is too quiet and your thoughts echo louder than you'd like. Memories return, uninvited, a laugh, a scent, a phrase only she ever used. You don't fight them. You don't collapse under them. You let them pass like weather. Because you've learned something she never did, that presence is more powerful than control. You don't need to hate her. That would mean she still owns part of you. No, you simply release her. Like smoke through open hands, you let her drift into your past where she belongs. Not as a villain, not even as a warning, just as a chapter that ended. One that taught you who you are by showing you who you're not. Because that's what pain does when you face it. It carves you open, strips you raw, and then slowly, with trembling hands, hands you back to yourself. Not polished, not perfect, but true. You no longer need to be loved to feel whole. You no longer measure your worth by how much someone else wants you. You know now real love doesn't control, it sees. And you are not invisible anymore, not to yourself. Somewhere a woman will meet you someday, and she won't be impressed by how agreeable you are, how well you read her moods, or how quickly you abandon your needs to satisfy hers. She'll see your truth. She'll feel your edges. And she'll respect both. Because this time you won't dim to be loved. You won't shrink to be held. You'll stand not in defiance but in honesty. Not waiting to be chosen but choosing yourself first. And if she can meet you there in that space of sovereignty and mutual recognition, that will be love. Not need, not control, but love. Until then, you keep walking. You keep breathing. You keep becoming. This pain wasn't your ending. It was your invitation. To remember who you are. To reclaim your story. To rise from a boy who begged to a man who belongs not to anyone else but to himself. She didn't love you. She loved the control. And now you've taken it back. Not to control others, but to live without being controlled ever again. This is your freedom. And if you made it here, through the ache and through the remembering, welcome home. We've been waiting for you.